Welcome to You Son of a Witch. We're launching a wizarding probe into two captivating flash fiction stories, diving deep into tales of hidden power and cunning survival. Forget your usual newsfeed. We're unearthing those fascinating nuggets within these fantastical narratives tailored just for you. Rate and follow You, Son of a Witch, to get more of this action each week as we delve into the wild world of flash fiction.
Yeah, these two flash fiction stories that you brought in really offer a fascinating look at how individuals navigate extraordinary circumstances.
Our first flash fiction story, Salem's Silent Witch, takes us to the chilling atmosphere of the Salem witch trials. You shared this one with us. And it immediately sparked our interest in how individuals navigate periods of intense paranoia and persecution. We're going to explore the story of Mercy, a woman accused of witchcraft who possesses genuine abilities, but must keep them secret to protect herself and others. We'll unpack her difficult choices and the unique form her courage takes.
It's a stark illustration, isn't it, of how fear can just distort reality and how easily individuals can become targets when societal anxiety reaches a fever pitch. Mercy's situation is particularly compelling because she genuinely has a power, but it's one she has to wield with incredible care. It makes you wonder, what is true power in such a context?
Exactly. And the setup immediately throws you into that suffocating atmosphere. Accusations are flying, and even the most ordinary skills or behaviors can be twisted into evidence of witchcraft. That's where we meet Mercy. She knows her herbs, eases fevers, and is observant. Skills that in normal times would be seen as beneficial, perhaps even respected as folk wisdom. But in Salem, they become women's tricks, something sinister. And because she's quiet and keeps to herself in the woods, she becomes an easy target when the girls' fits and accusations begin.
Yet it really highlights how easily the mundane can be pathologized when fear takes root in a community. Mercy's knowledge, which should be a source of comfort and healing, becomes a mark against her, fueling the very suspicion she needs to avoid.
And the trial itself. The flash fiction story depicts it as a complete sham. A girl's twitch is enough to condemn Mercy. It really underscores the absence of due process and the sheer power of suggestion and hysteria. It wasn't about truth or evidence. It was about finding someone to blame, someone to appease the collective fear.
Yeah, it's a chilling reminder of how quickly justice can be subverted.
Right.
When fear becomes the dominant force, the individual's rights and any semblance of rational thought are completely overwhelmed by the collective paranoia.
But then we see a glimmer of hope in an unexpected place, the jailer's wife. She shows pity for Mercy, and this is where Mercy, even in her confinement, displays a remarkable, if unsettling, cunning. She uses what's described as a whispered word, a brush of cold fingers, creating the illusion of a spectral presence to make the wife fall ill and believe she's been visited by a skeletal specter.
This is a pivotal moment, isn't it? Mercy, while not wielding magic in the traditional sense, uses her understanding of people's deep-seated fears and superstitions. To her advantage, she's essentially manipulating perception, creating a different, more immediate fear that cleverly shifts the focus away from her. What's fascinating here is that she's using the very thing that threatens her, fear of the supernatural, as a shield.
Precisely. Suddenly, the fear isn't solely directed at Mercy. It's now about the spectral figure haunting the jail. The magistrates, desperate to quell the growing unrest in the town, are likely hesitant to execute Mercy immediately when there's a new, seemingly more pressing supernatural threat. It introduces an element of doubt and buys her precious time.
And then we encounter Sarah, her cellmate, described as mad by the community, but also possessing a shrewd insight. She immediately recognizes that Mercy isn't just a passive victim of circumstance. Sarah's stark assessment, "Well, hang us all unless you do your tricks for the whole town," presents Mercy with an incredibly difficult and potentially deadly choice.
It really does put her between a rock and a hard place. Does she reveal her abilities? This subtle power to manipulate perception publicly in the midst of this intense frenzy. The risk is astronomical. It could easily be misinterpreted, leading to even more severe accusations and a swift execution. Yet the alternative is to remain silent and watch more innocent people be condemned based on nothing but fear and suspicion.
It's the classic ethical dilemma of individual survival versus the collective good. Amplified by these extreme life-or-death circumstances, Mercy has to weigh her own precarious existence against the potential to save others, knowing that any misstep could doom them all. It raises an important question about the nature of responsibility. When you possess a hidden power,
And her strategy, when she finally acts, is both brilliant and deeply unsettling. Instead of trying to directly refute the accusations of the girls, which would likely be futile and seen as further evidence of witchcraft. She amplifies the illusion she started with the jailer's wife. This spectral form appears dripping with grave rot, its voice Mercy's own, but amplified, and filled with an unnatural sorrow. And here's where it gets really interesting. She doesn't make vague threats. She directs specific prophecies of doom at the magistrates and their families.
This is a crucial turning point. By targeting the most powerful figures in the community, she's striking at the heart of their authority, and more importantly, their personal fears. The threat becomes immediate and deeply personal. For those in control of the trials, it shifts the dynamic of fear. Now the accusers become the potentially accused.
The impact is almost immediate. According to the flash fiction story, the magistrates and their wives are terrified. Suddenly, the girl's dramatic screams, which had been so effective in condemning others, begin to lose their power. Fear, which had been so effectively wielded against the accused, is now Mercy's weapon, turning the tide of accusations.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, albeit dark, example of how power dynamics can be subverted, even within the most oppressive environments. Mercy doesn't possess overt magical power, but she demonstrates a profound understanding of the power of fear and how to redirect it. It makes you wonder if this subtle manipulation is a form of power in itself, perhaps even more potent in this context than open defiance.
And the outcome is that the accusations against others slow dramatically and eventually stop altogether. The trials are replaced by panicked prayers and attempts to appease this new spectral threat. Mercy is labeled a conduit to the other side and remarkably spared execution, though she remains confined. It's definitely not a straightforward, triumphant victory.
Absolutely not. The flash fiction story poignantly emphasizes the burden of silence. Mercy isn't portrayed as a heroic savior who is then freed and celebrated. She's trapped by the very tactics that saved others. Years later, she reflects on the bitter victory. Her silence and calculated manipulation did prevent further deaths, but at a great personal cost, isolating her and forcing her to live with this secret.
Yeah, it's a really thought-provoking ending. The flash fiction story suggests that a true witch might have used overt magic to break free. But Mercy chose this path of subtle manipulation, the strategic use of fear, to protect the innocent. Her courage isn't in open rebellion, but in this quiet, strategic act of survival and protection, even at her own expense. So reflecting on Mercy's story, what are some of the key insights that stand out to you?
Well, what really resonates is this idea that power can manifest in the most unexpected ways, particularly when facing overwhelming oppression. Mercy's lack of overt magical ability forces her to become incredibly cunning in strategic interactions. It also brings to the forefront the ethical complexities of using fear as a weapon. Even when the intentions are arguably noble, her victory is deeply tainted by her continued confinement and the profound isolation she endures. It challenges our traditional notions of what constitutes a successful resistance.
It's a far cry from the typical heroic narrative we often encounter, isn't it? Now let's shift gears dramatically and move on to our second flash fiction story, The Witch of Wall Street, which presents a very different kind of power dynamic in a completely different setting.
Indeed, we leap from the fearful, religiously charged atmosphere of 17th century Salem to the opulent, fiercely competitive world of Gilded Age New York. Here we're introduced to Estelle Dubois, a penniless immigrant, fueled by immense ambition and possessing a subtle but significant advantage, a flicker of foresight.
This flicker of foresight is absolutely key to her story. It's not about receiving grand, sweeping prophecies, but more about these fleeting glimpses into near-future stock market shifts and potentially disastrous business deals. It's a subtle edge, but apparently just enough for her to begin building a considerable fortune from absolutely nothing.
Her early tactics are fascinating, aren't they? Her initial office is a humble rented garret, and her primary source of information, ironically, is the daily newspaper. But she's not just passively reading the financial news. She's actively analyzing the reactions of the powerful players, keenly observing their responses to various reports, and even leveraging overheard gossip. This constant gathering of information, combined with her uncanny foresight, becomes her most valuable asset in a world driven by information and speculation.
It's almost a form of applied psychology, intertwined with her unique ability. She's reading people, their anxieties, their confidence, their hidden agendas, just as much as she's reading the financial markets. And it doesn't take long for Estelle Dubois to become a name whispered with a mixture of awe and suspicion in the exclusive circles of the wealthy elite. Her rapid success confounds the established male investors, leading them to question whether it's merely luck, extraordinary brilliance, or something altogether more mysterious at play.
The flash fiction story really captures that inherent suspicion, and perhaps even resentment, her unprecedented success generates within this fiercely male-dominated world of finance. They simply can't comprehend a woman achieving such significant financial power through what they perceive as conventional means. It challenges their established order.
And that growing suspicion eventually draws the attention of someone who wields immense power in his own right. Cornelius, Brassheart, Vanderbilt. He's not a man to take such an anomaly lightly. His first reaction is to try brute force, sending thugs to intimidate her. But they are, somewhat anticlimactically, easily bribed. Then he resorts to what he understands as a higher form of influence, hiring a mage to magically uncover her secret.
This introduces a really interesting element to the narrative, the explicit existence of magic within this Gilded Age world, and the fact that those with significant resources can leverage it for their own purposes. However, Estelle's particular form of foresight proves to be remarkably difficult for the mage to detect directly. It's too subtle, too deeply intertwined with the seemingly mundane world of finance, rather than being an overt display of magical power.
And Estelle's defense is nothing short of ingenious. Instead of directly confronting the mage, or attempting to magically shield herself, she plants a terrifyingly vivid vision directly in his mind, an image of herself as a monstrous, many-eyed creature, with Wall Street ledgers dripping ominously from her claws. The mage understandably flees in absolute terror.
Yeah, it's a brilliant, almost theatrical use of psychological manipulation, echoing Mercy's tactics in Salem, but adapted perfectly to this different context. Estelle understands the potent power of fear and vivid imagery, even within the realm of magic. It suggests a sharp intellect that can leverage both mundane and potentially magical vulnerabilities.
Vanderbilt, ever the pragmatist, quickly shifts his strategy once he realizes brute force and magical investigation have failed. He extends Estelle an offer of partnership, a veiled threat, couched in the opulent setting of his grand mansion. His proposition, "Your foresight, my resources, together we could own this country," is both incredibly enticing, promising immense power, and inherently menacing, hinting at what might happen if she refuses.
It's a classic power play, isn't it? Vanderbilt recognizes Estelle's unique ability not just as a personal advantage for her, but as a potentially invaluable asset for his own ambitious goals. The casually stated aim of owning this country underscores the immense stakes involved in Vanderbilt's own ruthless ambition.
And Estelle, crucially, had foreseen this very moment. She accepts the partnership. But during the seemingly innocuous act of a handshake, she subtly shows Vanderbilt a vision of his own future, a future of being broken and betrayed, his vast empire ultimately stolen from him. She allows him to believe she is a valuable asset, all the while masking her knowledge of his eventual downfall.
This is the point where Estelle truly moves beyond simply reacting to her foresight and begins to actively shape her own destiny, and perhaps Vanderbilt as well. She understands that possessing knowledge of the future is a significant form of power, but the real skill lies in the timing and method of its application. She's playing a long game.
The flash fiction story concludes with Estelle embracing her burgeoning reputation, accepting her role as a monster in men's eyes. If that's what it takes to gain and maintain power in this cutthroat world, she's no longer just a survivor using her foresight to get by. She's actively aiming for dominance, seemingly willing to make whatever sacrifices are necessary. So, what are your thoughts on Estelle's journey and the unique form of power she wields?
Estelle's story is a compelling exploration of ambition and the significant sacrifices one might be willing to make in its relentless pursuit. Her foresight is a subtle but incredibly potent form of magic in this context, but her true power seems to lie in her sharp intellect, her keen ability to read and manipulate people, and her ultimate willingness to embrace a ruthless persona. In order to succeed in a ruthlessly competitive environment, she makes a clear transition from being a resourceful survivor to becoming a formidable manipulator of fate.
So, in this wizarding probe into Salem's Silent Witch and the Witch of Wall Street, we've encountered two remarkably different characters who wield unique forms of hidden power in incredibly challenging circumstances. Mercy's calculated silence and subtle manipulation in the fear-drenched atmosphere of Salem stand in stark contrast to Estelle's shrewd foresight and relentless ambition in the money-obsessed world of the Gilded Age.
What's particularly striking is how both women navigate worlds defined by intense underlying forces. In Mercy's case, a society consumed by religious paranoia and the fear of the unknown, and in Estelle's, a world driven by avarice and the ruthless pursuit of wealth. Both utilize their unique abilities not initially for personal glory or overt domination, but primarily for survival, and in Mercy's situation, the protection of others.
You provided these two fascinating flash fiction story examples, and they truly highlight the diverse and often unexpected ways in which power can be expressed, and the incredibly difficult choices individuals face when they possess unconventional knowledge or abilities in hostile environments.
Absolutely. Mercy's narrative makes you deeply consider the profound personal cost of silence and the immense burden of responsibility that comes with possessing a power you must conceal to survive and potentially help others. Estelle's journey raises complex questions about the nature of ambition and the ethical compromises one might be willing to make in the relentless pursuit of power and success, in a system that often rewards ruthlessness.
Consider this. In a world that is often quick to judge, and so frequently driven by hidden agendas, what kind of magic, be it profound knowledge, unique insight, or even strategic silence, do you think ultimately holds the most enduring power? And what are the often unseen and unacknowledged costs of wielding that power, regardless of its form? This has just been the beginning of our wizarding probe into these captivating flash fiction stories. There are always more layers to uncover and deeper questions to explore. We encourage you to revisit these tales, and perhaps consider what other hidden depths they might hold. Thanks for joining us for this wizarding probe on You Son of a Witch.